All right, today we're going to tackle a really big idea about how our minds work, how they keep everything straight. But we're going to do it in a kind of unexpected way. We're not starting in a lab with brain scans. We're starting with a bee.
So, what could a bee's eye possibly have in common with your brain? I know. It sounds a little out there, right? A tiny little insect versus, well, the sheer power of human thought. But trust me, stick with me on this one, because the answer reveals this really beautiful and powerful way to think about how we think. Okay, let's get into it.
Okay, so first up, let's talk hardware. It all starts with the bee's eye, which is, well, it's not just one eye. It's more like 1,000 eyes, and it's a total marvel of natural engineering. Yeah, a bee's eye is nothing like ours. It's what's called a compound eye, and it's made up of thousands of these tiny individual lenses. They're called ommatidia, and each little lens is capturing its own tiny piece of the world. Now, this isn't just about having a lot of them. It's about creating a totally different way of seeing. It's almost like a kaleidoscope. In this setup, it gives the bee what you can only describe as visual superpowers. We're talking about parallel spatial sampling, fancy term, but it just means it's taking in info from tons of different angles all at the same time. This creates this constantly shifting dynamic map of its world, and it lets the bee spot patterns incredibly fast. It's got nearly 360-degree awareness. Pretty amazing. So here's the key takeaway from this part. The bee isn't just seeing a single picture like we do. Nope. It's doing something called parallel distributed sensing. Just imagine having thousands of tiny cameras all feeding you data at the exact same moment. It's just this biological masterclass in how to manage a massive, multidimensional flood of information. But that incredible vision, that's only half the story. Now we get to see how that amazing visual input feeds into what is basically nature's internal GPS. Seriously, the way these bees navigate is just mind-blowing. You know, bees are absolute master navigators, and it's all thanks to this process called path integration. It really is like a living, breathing GPS. So here's how they do it. First, they log key visual landmarks around them. Then, they actually use the sun as a compass by reading patterns in polarized light. How cool is that? And at the same time, they're tracking their own movement. They have this internal sense of how far and in what direction they've flown. And all of this data, all of it, is constantly being used to update their own internal map of the world in real time. Okay, so let's just pause for a second and take stock. We've got an insect with a superpowered visual system and a built-in GPS. So why are we talking about this? What does any of this have to do with the human mind? Well, this is a moment where it all starts to connect. This brings us to the big idea of this whole explainer, what we can call the mind's master plan. We're about to introduce the cognitive framework that this whole bee analogy has been building up to. Okay, the theory is called tabular coherence maintenance. I know, it's a mouthful. Let's call it TCM. The tabular part, think of a spreadsheet, right? With tons of columns and rows of information. The theory basically says that our minds maintain their structure, their sanity, really, by constantly processing information across all these different dimensions all at once. But let's break that down even more. Okay, here's a much easier way to think about TCM. Just picture it as your brain's master filing system. Let's say you're planning a vacation. You've got a mental file for your budget, right? And another for your flight schedule, another for hotel bookings, another for what to pack. TCM is the system that keeps all those files talking to each other and making sense together. So if you decide to add an extra day to your trip, TCM is what immediately flags that you need to update your hotel booking, you need to adjust your budget, and hey, you probably need to pack another pair of socks. It's the operating system that makes sure all those different tables of information work together seamlessly. All right, and here we go. This is the moment it all clicks. This is where biology meets cognition. Let's connect that bee directly to your brain. And this table just lays it all out perfectly. It's brilliant. Look at this. The bee's compound eye, with all its thousands of inputs, that's a direct parallel to our brain's distributed networks. The bee's parallel sensing is just like how our working memory juggles multiple streams of thought. Its biological GPS system, well, that works a lot like our own complex dendritic networks. Those are the branching connections between our neurons. And finally, that path integration process we talked about, that is remarkably similar to how our own brain updates its cognitive maps. You see, both systems are absolute masters at taking in all this complex, multidimensional data and making sense of it. And look, this isn't just some cute metaphor. This is actually grounded in real neuroscience.
TCM is supported by a whole network of key brain regions. You've got the hippocampus, which is like the index for all your memories. The prefrontal cortex is the CEO handling executive control and decision making. And then you have the parietovisual areas, which pull all the spatial information together. It's a real physical distributed system in our heads, just like the one we see in the bee.
So let's really put them side by side. Think about it. A bee takes in thousands of visual signals all at once and integrates them to perform a single coherent action, like flying a perfect path back to the hive. And in pretty much the same way, your brain takes in countless thoughts, memories, feelings, and sensations and manages them to produce a single coherent output. That output could be a sentence you speak, a complex choice you make, or even a brand new idea.
And the source material for this explainer puts it perfectly, saying, these biological frameworks mutually reinforce the scientific plausibility of distributed, highly coordinated, multidimensional processing. Okay, so what does that really mean in plain English? It means that seeing this incredible system working so perfectly in nature, it gives scientists more confidence that this is actually how our own complex minds are built too. And that really leaves us with one final, pretty amazing thought. If the biology of a simple bee can give us such a powerful model for understanding the very architecture of our own minds, what other secrets are out there in nature, just waiting to help us unlock the mysteries of ourselves? It's a fascinating question. Thanks so much for joining me.